the revs starting to rise then. The red lights go on, they go out, and away they go. Oh, it's not a great start by Ryan Yarrow. There's lots of squirming away. It's ultimately Yarrow that does get into the lead, and Webb follows him. Scott Mittell is there in the Mittell, almost getting into the back of Richard Webb's car there through target for the first time. Looks like some of the Cup 200 cars have actually made quite a decent getaway in these conditions. It looks almost side by side for the lead round banking, and Ryan Yarrow spins from the race lead, and he's going to go right to the back of the field here before he can find a space to rejoin. So the championship leader by 40 points coming into this race really does have his work out. Colin Chapman there making a move in the number 63 car. He's got ahead of the number 42 car of Clint Newman. Now, as they're making their way along the backstretch, Dan Clues, I can see he's making up ground. Of course, he started a bit further back down the order for this one. Up towards Rocket they go for the first time, and that's Clint Newman trying to get a place back on Dan Clues. So Spire against Mittell up there, and it's the Mittell on the... No, he loses out in the end to Clint Newman, as they'll now be heading up to the right-hander uphill before they drop back down through the corkscrew. It's Clues trying to come back there at Clint Newman. But in the lead of the race is Richard Webb from Scott Mittell at the moment. I can tell you, as they're coming back down through the corkscrew, there's one of the Cup 200, or a couple of the Cup 200 cars there, including the 77 of Al Bolton.
I think that was actually the battle for the class lead, was it not, between Bolton and Cutmore? Bolton going around the outside, which is where the grip normally would be in these conditions, and certainly seemed to be the case, didn't it? Because it gained him the position. So across the line they go then. Webb, Mittell, Rogers, Chapman and Newman fifth. Clint Newman, as he did yesterday on the initial start to the race anyway, had a terrible getaway, but he's somehow crossing the line in fifth position and challenging now Colin Chapman for fourth as they head to the banking. He's on the outside line, and again that should prevail really in these slippery conditions. Dan Clues though thinking about making it three abreast, does make it three abreast on corner exit. They go either side of Colin Chapman, and Clint Newman actually may end up losing a spot too. Dan Clues up the inside of him, yes, takes two places for the price of one. A well-read situation that for Dan Clues, and he's up now into fourth place.
Leaders are heading up the hill. They're quite close, but this is quite close as well. The battle between Clint Newman and Dan Clues. They've both got ahead of Colin Chapman, so this is for fourth position. Where did Ryan Yarrow? Got back to 15th at the end of the first lap of the race, and he'll be continuing to charge his way through the order. Watching the 98 car there, which is John Cutmore, second within the Cup 200 class. There's Yarrow. He's fighting his way past, just getting past Mike Whiteman-Haywood, who leads the Cup 200 point standings now coming into this weekend. So Yarrow making another position there. There's Clint Newman in fifth position, I think he is at the moment. And there's Paul Rogers. He's third. Then it's Clues fourth. Newman fifth. Chapman sixth. Carl Austin up to seventh place, I think now ahead of Charlie Sladden as well. But these two leaders getting away, Andy.
Yeah, they are, but closing together, aren't they? Because Scott Mittell with a new fastest lap, a 24.6, was 8/10 quicker than the race leader that time. The gap down to only half a second then as they head for the banking. It's side by side behind them for third, as Dan Clues is really rocketing up the order. He's to the outside now of Paul Rogers into the banking, makes the switch back, cuts back to the late apex. Did he get up the inside towards Church Corner? We'll find out momentarily. There are the leading two, still Webb ahead of Mittell in the background, though, I reckon. Yes, that is Dan Clues now up into third position.
Yeah, but the leaders are side by side now, and it's Mittell who's got ahead through the right-hand king, past the school, up towards Rocket they go.
Oh.
Webb's going to try and come back at him, and he's going to go back through to retake the lead, and he does get the car turned in. So very momentarily, Scott Mittell took the lead. Look at the different line he's taking, trying to go all the way around the outside, cutting back to the inside on the exit of the corner. It actually seems to have worked pretty well because he's still quite close to the back of Richard Webb's car. Richard Webb was supposed to be in a Cup 200 car this weekend, but made a late switch into the Spire in the main Sports 1000 category, down into the corkscrew, and Mittell really had a good look up the inside there as well, but that didn't work out. So great battle for the lead here between two drivers with great history in the Sports 1000 category.
Tell you what, if these two keep battling, Dan Clues, now he's in clean air, might well be able to close in on them slightly as well. I'll be interested to see what pace Dan has now that he's broken through into that third position. The leaders go through then. They're both in the high 24s. Dan Clues, new fastest lap of the race, a 124.6, so only a couple of tenths quicker than them that time. But remember, that included an overtake. Speaking of an overtake, there's Carl Austin looking up the inside of Colin Chapman. This for sixth position at the first corner, and I think that that Carl Austin will go through. So Austin up into 6th position in the number 44 car. But keep an eye on car number 2, Dan Clues. He's quicker than the leaders. He is 5.5 seconds off the lead. But if those lead two keep on battling in, that gap could close.
It could. The leaders are side by side. I can tell you, up towards School Corner, here they are. And again, Scott Mattel's got back through. Now look, he's taken the line, has he, this time? Webb's having to go to the outside, around the outside of him this time into Rocket. Can he make it work? They are wheel to wheel. And no, it's Webb that just has to back out of that there. Scott Mattel took his position and he has kept the lead of the race this time. Fantastic racing between these two. Scott Mattel, the 2015 champion, Richard Webb, the 2022 champion, both of them with Sports 1000 titles to their name, and they are really showing it here. But as you say, Dan Clues and then Ryan Yarrow getting the fastest lap of the race. Don't write Ryan Yarrow off here either, because he is now up to 9th place.
Big slide there from Richard Webb down through the corkscrew. He is giving this everything he's got to try and stay with Scott Mattel. Mattel, though, gets slightly better traction off the final corner and will lead the race by 0.8 of a second then at the end of that, the 4th lap of racing. What pace has Dan Clues got? Not as quick, because actually Scott Mattel just set a fastest lap at 23.9. How on earth did he set a new fastest lap when they were side by side in that fashion through Rocket? That is remarkable, and that does rather suggest that now Mattel's out in front. He may have the pace to pull away.
It was almost stationary, wasn't it, at one point? That's quite remarkable. That, for context, is about 12.5 seconds slower than they were yesterday in the dry conditions. Ryan Yarrow's up to 7th now. Another fastest lap of the race for him at 1:23.463. He's just under 15 seconds behind the leader. He's obviously yet to have some clear track. He's now past Carl Austin as well for 6th place at Church Corner. His next target is Paul Rogers, himself a champion in the past, but actually Carl Austin now coming back at Ryan Yarrow. So the two Spire drivers fighting it out up the hill. You'd think that Ryan Yarrow, the double champion, championship leader, ought to be able to assert his authority on this. He has done now up at the top of the hill, and he does go to 6th place.
Yeah, it looked like he had that move made, but then he ran wide over the curb on the exit of Church Corner, and of course in these conditions those curbs are like ice, so he had to lift off the throttle, lost himself some momentum, but he's regained that momentum well and truly now as he slips up the inside of Paul Rogers at Peel Corner from a mile back and will make that move. So that's 2 places gained on this lap then for Ryan Yarrow. He's back into the top 5. Scott Mattel, the race leader, is getting away. He's set a new fastest lap, 1:23.1 now, but there's no doubt about it that Ryan Yarrow is every bit as quick as the leaders. What a shame from our perspective that he had that spin at the start, because this could have been an even more entertaining 3-way battle at the front. He may yet get on the podium, but whether or not he can challenge Mattel and Webb, that could maybe be a step too far.
Yeah, it could be. He's got 6 seconds to make up first on Clint Newman, hasn't he? So you could just see the gap between them at this part of the circuit. Basically, Newman coming out of the banking as Ryan Yarrow is going into it. Can tell you in the Cup 200 class, John Cutmore now has the lead in number 98 from number 77 Al Bolton, so that's a reversal of the earlier positions. Meanwhile, look at this, because that is Paul Rogers with Carl Austin right behind him. So Carl Rogers has gained a little bit of Carl Austin has gained a little bit of ground. He was 0.8 of a second quicker than Rogers on the previous lap.
Yep, up the hill he goes then. There is Paul Rogers. And Carl Austin in 7th position, closing in ever so slightly. Up towards Rocket Corner they go. And you can see just how difficult it is to get the car stopped up at the top of the hill, but they managed to do so just about. Then it's Colin Chapman, Charlie Sladden and Jonathan McGill to complete the top 10. The overall race leaders, though, heading out of the final corner, and definitely some more real estate now between Scott Mattel and Richard Webb. What was a 1.6 second cushion has, well, more than doubled to 3.3 seconds now. Dan Clues in 3rd position, continuing to put in personal best lap, and he is about 3/4 of a second a lap quicker than Richard Webb. So Dan Clues for 2nd could be on the cards maybe. What pace has Ryan Yarrow got in clean air? A 23.5, so quicker than those ahead, but not by that much.
Yeah, and not as quick as his personal best lap either, so interesting to note that although they've got clear track again, it only takes a mistake, as you say, getting a wheel on the curb to cost you a bit of time in these conditions. So Ryan Yarrow still with 5.3 seconds to make up on Clint Newman, and there's only 6 minutes of this race left to do so. So he's not going to get, I don't think, towards the top 2. He might just about start to trouble Dan Clues before the end, but even that is a relatively tall order at this stage of the race. In the Cup 200 battle, it's closed up. 1.2 seconds between John Cutmore there in the blue car, the white car of Al Bolton, as they're making their way through the banking that time. So we'll see if that battle does indeed continue. So just over 5 minutes left to go in this race. Here a little bit further back, you can see the number 4 car, John Murphy. He's got the 46 car, Charlie Wright, behind him. And they're not too far away from being lapped by the race leader. Here he is, Scott Mattel. Has he done another personal best lap of the race? No, not this time, actually. A slower lap from him, a 1:24 compared to the 1:22.8 that's been his best lap of the race so far.
Still half a second quicker than Richard Webb, though. Dan Clues does a 23.5 and was 1.1 seconds quicker than Webb. So he's got just under 5 minutes to try and bridge a 3.8 second gap, but he is lapping around a second a lap quicker than the driver ahead, so that could be pretty much nip and tuck, as indeed is the fight for 6th position. Carl Austin has now caught Paul Rogers, but where, if anywhere, can he make a pass? Peeks to the inside into target corner, but not able to make the move on this occasion. They exit the quick left-hander, head towards the banked hairpin at turn 2. Two completely different lines taken into the corner, and a big slide there from Paul Rogers. Did well to catch that, but he will lose momentum on corner exit, and Carl Austin sees his opportunity.
Yep, so this is for P6. Austin up the inside, the man from Devon gets ahead of the 2011 champion Paul Rogers from Norfolk. Can he hold on to it? They've both avoided that slippery curb at Church Corner, heading off now up the hill through that right-hand kink, and then they continue to climb and climb and climb. Then they get on the brakes for the left-hander up at Rocket. There they are, turning their way through the left-hander now, and now heading towards the right-hand element of the corner, and then on to another slow right-hander at Peel. Here is the race leader. That's the number 5 car, Scott Mittel. As you can see, has started to now get into the traffic, and there are a couple of back marks between himself and Richard Webb, who is now 4 seconds behind the leader, the man from RLM. Dan Clues has done another fastest lap of the race, a 1:22.617 now, and he's only 2.7 seconds behind Webb, with probably 3 laps to go.
And he'll be very much enjoying seeing Richard Webb struggling to make his way through the traffic, won't he? That was not the easiest overtake against Charles Wright there that Richard had to make. Meanwhile, the Cup 200 leaders were side by side when they last left my view up at Peel. As they come back into sight out of the window, I can see it's still Cutmore ahead of Al Bolton, but Bolton definitely taking the fight now to the number 98 car. They're about to come down into the final corner, and there are only a couple of cars lengths between them. Further up the field, though, Ryan Yarrow continuing to charge on. Yarrow into the top 5 now.
And there's a car off there. Now, was that Paul Rogers, I think, possibly off at the banking? He's rejoined the circuit now, having lost a little bit of time. He got onto the grass there. There's the Cup 200 lead battle heading into the banking as well. And it's right together now, isn't it? There was about half a second between them at the start of the lap. It's Cutmore still ahead of Al Bolton. Out of the banking they go, down towards the right-hander at Church Corner. They've got one of the Sports 1000 cars behind as well. Different lines being taken by the two drivers. Both of these very experienced drivers across a range of different categories. Cutmore primarily in Sports 1000 or RGB as it was. Bolton's gone off and raced in different things like Praga and Radicals and historic cars as well. They're climbing up towards Rocket now. Can Bolton make a move? He's having a look up on the inside of Cutmore to take the lead of the Cup 200 class, and he's done it. He's squeezed through there on the way into Rocket.
Nicely done. He tried that a lap ago. It didn't quite work, but next time by, he managed to make the move stick. So good stuff there from Al Bolton to get into the class lead. We'll have to wait and see whether or not he can keep it. Across the line goes Carl Austin. Of course, he'd just gone past Paul Rogers before Paul had that little half spin, which he nearly did a lap earlier. Got very sideways at the banking a lap ago, and then obviously got a bit more sideways next time by. There he goes across the line down in 9th position now. Jonathan McGill should be the next one through in 10th position, which he is. And then we wait for the Cup 200 leaders, and there the white number 77 car of Alistair Bolton, who has fought his way back into this race, back in the lead now with 2 laps to go.
Yep. Just over a minute left on the clock. Scott Mittel leading the race by 3.6 seconds now. Webb did a personal best on the last lap, actually. A 1:23.3, took 3/10 out of the race leader, but this... and Bolton almost a bit out of shape there at the banking. He does manage to hold on to the class lead, though. Mike Whiteman-Hayward is not too far behind either in the red number 111 car in 3rd position in that group. Through Church Corner they go. There is our race leader, Scott Mittel. Number 5, he's just heading through target up towards the banking. Once again, this will now be the last lap. Lap board has been shown. Dan Clues has got another fastest up of the race, a 1:22.033. He's actually about 0.7 of a second faster than anyone else has been during the course of this race, which is quite impressive, but he's still 2.5 seconds behind Webb.
I do think the track conditions are improving, though, because Webb, Clues and Clint Newman in 4th place all put in personal best laps last time by, and Dan Clues setting all of these fastest laps you would think would be already on the tail of Richard Webb, but Webb is going quicker than he's been so far in the race as well. There, slipping up the inside is Scott Mattel, putting a lap on the number 9 of Nassim Hack, and into Rocket. He makes that move stick cleanly and is now less than half a lap away from the victory. But in these conditions, you've got to keep your wits about you, even in the closing stages, particularly with traffic around, having to go offline to negotiate it. But he's managed it well so far. Should now be on course for the win as second place in Cup 200, Ian. That could still be settled.
It could, because Mike Whiteman-Haywood now is got Cutmore immediately in his sights, the vastly more experienced Cutmore, so we'll see if that's going to change. But Scott Mittel is just coming out now off the final corner up to the line, and Scott Mittel is going to take the checkered flag. There he is to win the second race of 3 this weekend for the Nankang Sports 1000 Championship. Richard Webb goes across the line in second place. Dan Clues takes 3rd position. The top 3 covered by about 4 seconds there. Ryan Yarrow, is he going to be 4th? Yes, he is. So what happened to Clint Newman on the final lap? He's dropped a long way back. I think he must have had a moment on the last lap out of our sight, because he's fallen a long way back. So Ryan Yarrow from the back to 4th, Clint Newman 5th, and it should be Carl Austin in 6th. Yes, it's going to be. Just having a look to see if we can see anywhere on track the Cup 200 battle for second place. I think that's probably up at the top of the circuit right now. Here it is. So it's Bolton ahead of Cutmore, ahead of Mike Whiteman-Haywood, about to come down through the corkscrew for the final time in that race. So Bolton looks like he's going to win the class, as he did yesterday, and I don't think we're going to see a flip between 2nd and 3rd. No, it's going to be John Cutmore 2nd, Andy, and Mike Whiteman-Haywood 3rd.
Oh, Alistair Bolton with a big slide coming off the final corner. Careful, Alistair. We've seen that bike drivers already this weekend. A real run to the line, actually, between Cutmore and Haywood. Only 2/10 between them in the end at the flag. But really good battling there across the Cup 200 campaigners. Helped a little bit by the fact Al Bolton had a poor start, I think, and had to then fight his way back through. But yeah, that was probably an even more entertaining race than yesterday's was, in all honesty. And in the wet conditions, you wouldn't necessarily have expected that. But Scott Mattel and Richard Webb, brilliant side-by-side battling early on. It was good fun watching Dan Clues and Ryan Yarrow come back through the field. So, yeah, entertaining stuff.
It was indeed, and Scott Mattel just making a bit of a one-off appearances, I think, this weekend. Nevertheless, pleased to get a win for the Mattel manufacturer. Ryan Yarrow, not too much damage done with that 4th position. He also have a healthy lead in the championship. A rundown on those results. Scott Mattel, number 5, the 2015 champion, winning in the Mattel MC53 at the end of 11 laps of racing. As Alex Aloro, who just goes across the line now, he was very much delayed. 2nd to number 8, Richard Webb. 3rd to number 2, Dan Clues. 4th was 54, Ryan Yarrow. 5th, 42, Clint Newman. Running out the top 6, 44, Carl Austin. And it was Colin Chapman, Charlie Slatton, Paul Rogers and Jonathan McGill. They completed the top 10. Best of the Cup 200 cars was Alistair Bolton in number 77, 11th place for him, ahead of Ian Hutchinson, John Cutmore and Mike Whiteman-Haywood. And I think we then had in 15th place a very late finisher in the form of Alex Aloro. The rest a lap down, Naeem Hack, John Murphy and Charlie Wright. But I think we had all 18 starters make it to the end of the second race of the weekend for the Nankang Tyre Sports 1000 Championship, featuring Cup 200, and they are back out again a little bit later on in the day. But for now, we're going to head down to the Park Ferme area, and for the first time today, we're going to speak to Kieran Mogg.
Well, you know what they say, rain is the great equaliser, and it sure was today. And Scott Mattel is on top with the number 5 here. And we'll go and grab Scott over there, which is chatting with his team. But if we can just jump in here once the cars have gone past. Scott, that was absolutely amazing. You had one attempt at it, but the second one stuck.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I knew Richard was going to fight it hard, and I thought I had the pace on him anyway. So when he came back down the inside, I was like, you know what, I'm not going to fight this too hard, and I'll just not give him the inside next time. But it was still close the second time. But yeah, once I broke away, I thought I can pull a little bit. It's always hard though when you're in the wet. It's like, how hard do I push now? When I had a bit of a lead, so I was just trying to manage the gap. The guys in the team were doing the board, and so we knew where we were.
Definitely look comfortable in the wet. How does the track evolve when it is the slippery surface? Do you prefer it in the wet or do you prefer it in the dry?
I don't mind wet or dry, to be honest. we obviously didn't have the pace yesterday in the dry, but we changed loads of stuff overnight, so I kind of wanted to find out if it was right in the dry now, but hopefully we'll find out later.
Absolutely. Well, good luck later then.
Cheers, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And we'll speak to our class winner, Alistair. Alistair, you had to fight for that one, but it was all good.
Yeah, I think my eyes are still on stalks. It's very difficult to see out there. I had a really good battle with John, and I have Mike behind me as well. And these Cup 200 cars are amazing in the wet. You can race so close. We had a little bit of wheel banging just up the top into Peel, but yeah, fantastic. Just really pleased to get the win.
Absolutely. And you mentioned there just about the visibility. Obviously, the rain has come down quite heavy overnight, and we saw on the camera there's a lot of spray being kicked off the cars. Yeah. How difficult actually is it to spot your reference points?
It's fine until you're following someone else, and all you see is like their red rain light, and you're just kind of guessing where the track is. But there was quite a lot of grip on the outside, so I was trying to go around there, and I think that's where I made up some time and caught up John.
Absolutely. Well, congratulations on the win.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyway, we'll go to a quick ad break, and then coming up next, the Type R's. See you in a second.